have you filled up lately? Gas prices are climbing across Canada as conflict in the Middle East intensifies. Experts say these higher gas prices could last for weeks, even months, depending on how long the crisis continues. Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, is joining me now. Listen, Dan, you and I have been talking for more than a decade across 3 networks about gas prices. When you tell me I need to fill up my car, I listen, and I did it yesterday. According to the CAA, the national average gas price in Canada rose to around $1.41 a litre. That was up from $1.29 just a week ago. How high can we expect this to go?
Well, the good news, of course, is that this time last year, you were paying $1.53, $1.54 because we had the carbon tax. But this year, you know, prices have moved up. They moved up dramatically, and we're seeing NRA examples of where prices now are pushing well into the high $1.40s. So we could be at that where we were this time last year as early as this weekend. Why? Well, we've seen an average across Canada of 6 cent a litre increase yesterday, a 3 cent a litre increase today, a 2 cent a litre increase tomorrow, and Saturday looks like at least a 3 to 4 cent a litre increase right across the country. Now, of course, the Maritimes have regulated prices, and they sometimes have to wait for these changes to take place. But when they happen very dramatically. So right across the country, we're achieving numbers that we haven't seen in a long time. And of course, we're not getting the protection we once did. That is the Canadian dollar. And where you and I have talked about many times in the past, the fact that as oil prices rose or energy prices rose, the Canadian dollar actually rose in step and against the U.S. greenback. That's critical because now that it takes 136, 137 pennies to buy a U.S. dollar, that's adding about 24, 25 cents a litre to the price of gasoline. So we're not getting the protection we did in the past. We
are also heading into a season of travel. As it warms up in this country, people are going to be traveling with their families, sporting events, you name it. There's more reasons to have to fill up. I'm glad to have you here so I can ask the question of you that people ask of me, which is, how much of this increase is directly tied to the war in Iran? How does that work?
100%. We had oil trading at the top 50s, low 60s at the beginning of February when there was talk of potential strike on Iran. That pushed it up to about $67 a barrel, which is where it was, by the way, on Friday. And that moved it up to where it is today, $75, $76, $77 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate, which we use in most of Canada, except Brent on the East Coast. That's an extra $5 or $6. But it means that, as quickly as this thing could come, and when hopes it does, to a cessation, we could see those prices climb right back down. If, however, it goes to April the 15th, we know in Canada we switch from winter to summer blends of gasoline. That's a thing. That'll add 10 cents a litre to the price of gas, making it a little bit more expensive around the middle of April, looking further ahead than it was this time last year. Nevertheless, there is a war premium. It's 100% attached to the price of fuel. And unlike the past, as I mentioned, the Canadian dollar is not strong. It continues to languish, and as a result, we're feeling the full effect of the price of gasoline. I should point out diesel is even more concerning. It's gone up 28 cents a litre. That means that transportation of all forms, jet, train, truck, all of these things are starting to impact, and we will probably see this time next week. Not that I would recommend they do it, but carriers are going to have to pass on what's called something we haven't heard in years, a fuel surcharge. And so that could have a real mark on the price of just about everything, including, of course, food, but more importantly, the cost of living. An inflationary number set by the Bank of Canada could now very much be out the window.
Wow. Dan, really quickly, if this situation in Iran is resolved quickly, the president has said gas prices are going to go down, maybe even lower than they were before. How long, you can tell me whether or not if that's true, but how long does it take for the gas prices to at least come back down or something that we're used to paying?
Depending on the markets, 24, 48 hours later. That's why I can predict 2 days ahead, and I've been doing it for many years with you and others. Look, the president still has another card he can drop. Trump can drop a card. And that would be the release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. But, we haven't seen oil go as high as one would have expected. A $7, $8, $9 a barrel oil increase doesn't really amount to a reflection of crisis. Perhaps markets are already discounting the severity of the war, the conflict, and believing that there will be at some point some quicker resolution, I think, than is anticipated. But the United States still has an important lever it can play. If oil prices do get out of control, they will release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, as will China, as will many other countries that have built those reserves over the past several years.
But for everybody who's listening, who has a vehicle that they need to fill up, get ready to pay more, at least in the next couple of weeks.
I would say you're going to look at another 15-cent increase minimum on diesel, perhaps a doubling, so another 20 to 30 cents. And that's important for my friends driving diesel. Pick it up today. I know it's up 24, 25 cents a liter. It could be up another 20 cents a liter by the end of next week. At this stage, this is probably as good as it's going to get before things start to resolve themselves. And we will see those prices come down rather dramatically, especially diesel, because as we head to summer months, diesel doesn't have the great importance that gasoline does, and we could see prices fall even further.
Dan McTeague, it's a good thing you don't set the price of gas, but you tell us what it's going to be so we can make the decisions ourselves. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Really appreciate that. Thanks again, Anna Marie.